You've always been so lackluster, Eleanor, my father said, his voice slicing through the lively chatter at our family's ornate dining table. Not everyone's built for greatness, and that's fine. Leave the real challenges to those with the spark, like your brother. I placed my fork down with deliberate care, my hands trembling beneath the table. But I met his gaze with steady defiance. And yet, Dad, despite your judgment, my so-called lackluster self is the only one here, besides you with a proven record of success, I said, my tone even but sharp. My older brother Julian smirked, that familiar, condescending grin that had shadowed my life for years. I'm Eleanor Vance, 32 now, but when this journey began, I was just the overlooked middle child in a family where worth was measured by charisma, power, and spectacle. My father, Harold Vance, was the mastermind behind one of Seattle's most formidable real estate empires, a titan whose name commanded respect in boardrooms and beyond. Julian, the eldest, was his chosen heir, the prodigy destined to inherit the crown despite his reckless decisions. My younger sister, Lila, was the family's darling, more invested in curated social media posts and influencer deals than any meaningful responsibility. And then there was me, quiet, reliable, and, to them, utterly forgettable. The rest of the dinner passed in a haze of exclusion. Julian dominated the conversation, boasting about a recent property acquisition he claimed was a triumph, though I'd heard whispers at a company event that the deal was riddled with issues. My father leaned in, his eyes gleaming with pride, peppering Julian with questions to keep the spotlight on him. Layla chimed in sporadically, her anecdotes about her latest sponsored getaway as fleeting as her attention span. I sat in silence, nudging roasted asparagus around my plate, my mind circling a persistent question. Why did I still endure these gatherings? When I was younger, I threw myself into proving my worth. I graduated near the top of my class, seized every internship I could, and worked tirelessly, believing effort would earn me a place in their esteem. But no matter my achievements, outperforming my peers, devising strategies to propel Vance Properties forward, the response was always the same. "You're too reserved," my father would say, his tone heavy with disappointment. "You lack the ruthless edge this business demands." They'd cast me as the inconsequential sibling, and no amount of evidence could shift their verdict. The breaking point came 4 years ago, unnoticed by my family. I was sitting in one of Vance Properties' weekly strategy meetings, a ritual where my father and Julian made all the decisions while the rest of us served as backdrop. That day, I'd prepared a meticulous proposal to transform a failing commercial property into a thriving mixed-use development. I'd spent weeks researching market trends, crunching numbers, and refining my pitch, convinced it was a plan even. My father couldn't dismiss. When my moment to speak arrived, I barely managed 2 sentences before Julian cut me off. "That site's a dead end," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "We've poured too much into it already. Let's move on. I've actually devised a way to—" I began, but my father silenced me with a curt wave. "If Julian says it's not viable, it's not viable," Harold said, his voice final. "Next item." I sat there, my face burning, my carefully crafted proposal reduced to a forgotten stack of papers as the meeting charged forward without me. The rejection stung, but it also lit a fire. That night, alone in my apartment, I made a vow. If my family wouldn't hear me in their empire, I'd build one of my own. I didn't resign from Vance Properties immediately. That would have drawn scrutiny. Instead, I started small, carving out my own path in the shadows. My first investment was a rundown triplex on Seattle's outskirts, purchased with the modest savings I'd scraped together. To others, it was a lost cause. To me, it was a canvas of potential. I spent weekends sanding floors, repainting walls, and learning the nuances of property management. When I sold it a year later, the profit was small but profound. It was mine, earned through my vision and labor. That modest triumph marked the beginning of something greater. Over the next few years, I scoured Seattle for undervalued properties, each one a challenge I turned into opportunity. My most pivotal decision was partnering with Nadia Patel, a sharp-witted real estate investor I'd met through a mutual contact. Nadia was everything I needed in a collaborator: astute, seasoned, and driven by a hunger to defy expectations. Together, we built something extraordinary, property by property, deal by deal. By the time I turned 30, our portfolio was flourishing, encompassing residential complexes, boutique office spaces, and prime retail locations. What began as a side venture had evolved into a formidable enterprise under the name Patel and Associates. Dios, name chosen to avoid my family's recognition. I wasn't just amassing wealth, I was crafting a legacy. Quietly, steadily, I'd become one of my father's fiercest competitors, snapping up properties Vance Properties had deemed unprofitable and transforming them into successes. Each deal was a private victory, a step toward proving, not to my family but to myself, that I was more than the shadow they'd cast me in. One evening, as I pored over financial reports in our modest office, Nadia walked in, balancing 2 cups of coffee. "You've been at this for hours," she said, sliding one across the desk. "Take a break, Eleanor. Even you need to recharge." I smiled, sipping the coffee. "I can't help it. Every time I see these numbers climb, I'm already plotting the next move. There's a warehouse near the waterfront I've got my eye on." Nadia raised an eyebrow, settling into a chair. "Let me guess. Undervalued, ignored by the big players, but you've already cracked the code to make it a gold mine?" "Exactly," I said, grinning. "The kind of property my dad and Julian would scoff at, which makes it perfect." Nadia leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "Speaking of them, don't you think it's only a matter of time before they realize who's behind Patel and Associates?" "Maybe," I shrugged, "but by then it won't matter. We're not just surviving, we're thriving. And honestly," I paused, swirling my coffee, "part of me doesn't care if they find out. They've dismissed me my whole life. I've learned to thrive without their approval." Nadia studied me, a knowing look in her eyes. "You're not doing this for their validation, Eleanor. You're doing it for you. And if they ever figure it out, I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that reckoning." I laughed, her words settling over me. "You're right. This is for me. And whether they know or not, we've built something incredible." Nadia raised her coffee in a mock toast. To building something incredible, I clinked my cup against hers, a spark of determination igniting within me. To building something incredible, family gatherings were a relentless reminder of my perceived inadequacy. "Eleanor, when was the last time you even showed up at the office?" my father would sneer, shaking his head as if my presence were an affront. "For someone with shares, you're remarkably good at being invisible." Julian, ever eager to twist the knife, would chuckle. "Not that anyone notices. The company's not exactly missing your brilliant ideas." They thought their jabs were clever, unaware of why I'd stepped back. I stopped going to the office regularly when I began working with Nadia, initially to focus on our projects, later as self-preservation. Each visit was a reminder that, to them, I was an afterthought, unworthy of inclusion or respect. I appeared only when unavoidable shareholder meetings, where I fulfilled my obligations and slipped away. To them, my absence was proof of my irrelevance. To me, it was freedom to build something they couldn't imagine. Nadia was the face of Patel and Associates, a strategic choice we made together. She handled public engagements, media interviews, and high-stakes negotiations, her confidence and charisma unmatched. I thrived behind the scenes, orchestrating strategy, analyzing data, and steering decisions with precision. It wasn't about hiding, it was about playing to our strengths. To the world, Patel and Associates was Nadia's creation, a dynamic reel, estate firm led by a visionary woman with an eye for untapped potential. Investors admired her, competitors envied her, and the press devoured her story. Few knew of the strategist behind the curtain, the architect whose meticulous planning drove every success. This anonymity was intentional, granting me the freedom to operate without my family's scrutiny. My name was absent from the website, my face missing from annual reports. To the industry, Eleanor Vance was merely a nominal shareholder in her family's empire, a name on paper with no active role. Even if someone probed Patel and Associates' operations, they'd find no trace of me. My father and Julian saw the firm as a minor competitor, never suspecting I was the one outpacing them. The irony was my greatest weapon, a silent triumph. That fueled my resolve. But I knew this balance couldn't last. The more Patel and Associates grew, the brighter its spotlight. And one day, my worlds would collide. The annual industry gala was my father and Julian's stage, a glittering arena. for networking, deal-making, and reinforcing Vance Properties' dominance. I had no intention of attending. Such ostentatious affairs weren't my domain. But Nadia insisted, tossing an elegant navy dress onto my couch. Come on, Eleanor. You've earned a night to celebrate. Plus, it'll be fun to watch everyone squirm when they see how far Patel and Associates has come. Reluctantly, I agreed, knowing my presence would likely go unnoticed. My family had written me off so thoroughly that I'd blend into the crowd, a prospect I welcomed. The ballroom was a vision of opulence, its chandeliers casting prisms of light across gilded walls. Waiters glided through clusters of Seattle's elite, offering champagne as laughter and business cards exchanged hands. Spotting my father and Julian, I braced for the inevitable. Well, well, Julian said, his smirk resurfacing as I passed their table. Look who bothered to show up. You know, Eleanor, these events are for people who actually matter in the industry. Be civil, Harold muttered, though his tone was hardly warmer. He adjusted his tie, barely glancing at me. Just don't embarrass us. I swallowed a retort and retreated to a table at the back, where Nadia and our colleagues waited. My family couldn't see me there. How's it going with them? Nadia whispered, nodding toward Harold and Julian. As expected, I replied. Let's just get through this. As the evening unfolded, awards were presented, and Vance Properties claimed none. My father's expression darkened with each. Announcement, Julian's bravado waning. I observed from the sidelines, content to remain detached. Then came the final award. And the award for unparalleled innovation and excellence in real estate goes to Patel & Associates, the host declared. My heart skipped as applause erupted. Nadia rose, radiant, and made her way to the stage. My father and Julian exchanged baffled glances, clearly puzzled that a smaller firm had outshone them. Nadia accepted the award with grace, her presence commanding the room as she took the microphone. Thank you, she began, her voice warm and assured. This honor means the world to Patel & Associates and everyone who's contributed to our journey. When we started, we had a vision. To find value where others saw none, to innovate where others played safe, and to build not just properties, but opportunities. Tonight, among such talent, this award validates that vision. The crowd clapped politely, but Nadia wasn't finished. She stepped closer to the microphone, her tone shifting to something more personal. This moment isn't just about me or our team. It's about someone who's worked tirelessly behind the scenes, whose brilliance and tenacity have been the heartbeat of Patel & Associates. I stand here because of her vision, her strategic genius, and her unwavering dedication. My stomach tightened as Nadia's gaze found me, a knowing smile on her lips. Many of you may not know her name, because she shuns the spotlight, but without her, Patel & Associates wouldn't be what it is. The mind behind every deal, every risk, every triumph is my partner and confidant, Eleanor Vance. The room fell silent, then erupted in murmurs. Heads turned, whispers spreading like wildfire. My father and Julian sat frozen, their faces a mix of shock, disbelief, and something akin to humiliation. Harold's jaw tightened. Julian's smirk vanished. Nadia continued, undeterred. Eleanor is a leader who doesn't need to shout to be heard. Her work speaks for itself. She sees potential where others see failure, takes risks others shy away from, and fights for her beliefs despite countless skeptics. Her brilliance has not only transformed our company, but has redefined real estate innovation. It's time the world knows her name. Nadia's words struck me like a tide, dismantling the walls I'd built against years of doubt. The murmurs grew, but so did the applause, my colleagues rising to cheer. Nadia extended her hand. Eleanor, join me. This moment is yours as much as mine. For a moment, I couldn't move, my heart pounding, legs leaden. Then Nadia's warm smile anchored me, and the applause registered. I stood, knees trembling but resolve hardening with each step toward the stage. As I climbed the stairs into the spotlight, I felt the weight of every gaze, my father's, Julian's, and the industry's elite, unaware I'd been shaping their world from the shadows. Nadia handed me the award, her hand on my shoulder. This is Eleanor Vance, she said, pride resonating in her voice. And if you haven't heard of her yet, you will. Holding the award, the applause thundering around me, I felt a validation I hadn't known in years. Not from the crowd, but from within. My eyes briefly met my father's and Julian's, their stunned expressions a mix of shock and a flicker of reluctant respect. Nadia leaned in, her voice a whisper. Say something! I stepped to the microphone, my pulse racing. Speeches weren't my forte, but this was about being seen. I took a breath. Thank you, I began, my voice clear despite the lump in my throat. This is unexpected but deeply meaningful. When Nadia and I started Patel and Associates, we bet on overlooked properties, dismissed ideas, and ourselves. Tonight proves those risks were worth it. The crowd clapped, but I pressed on. To those who believed in us, thank you. And to those who didn't, I allowed a small smile. Thank you for underestimating us. It fueled our success. Laughter and applause followed, but my focus was on my father's unreadable expression and Julian's clenched jaw. I stepped back, Nadia beaming beside me as we left the stage. Now that, Nadia said with a grin, was a moment to savor. Back at our table, whispers trailed us, the room's attention lingering. Nadia leaned over, amused. I'd pay to know what's going through your dad's mind right now. I glanced at their table. My father sat rigid, hands clasped, staring ahead. Julian looked ready to burst, muttering heatedly. Lila, oblivious, sipped her champagne, eyeing the tension. They'll come around, Nadia said, reading my thoughts. Maybe not tonight, maybe not ever as you deserve, but they'll have to acknowledge what you've built. Maybe, I replied, though I no longer cared. Their recognition wasn't my aim. It was a byproduct of proving I could thrive without them. As the gala wound down, my father approached our table, Julian trailing sullenly. Nadia stood, extending her hand with a gracious smile. Mr. Vance, an honor to meet you. He shook her hand stiffly, his confidence dimmed. Likewise, he said, his voice strained. His eyes flicked to me, pride and unease mingling. Eleanor, we need to talk. Julian snorted, arms crossed. Talk? What's to discuss? You've been undermining the family business behind our backs. Nadia's smile held, but her tone sharpened. Undermining? I'd say Eleanor's been doing what you should have. Innovating, succeeding. But let's save that debate for another time. Julian's face reddened, but my father silenced, him with a sharp gesture. Enough. He turned to me. Can we step outside? Just us. On the terrace, Seattle's skyline glittered below, the cool night air a balm against the ballroom's intensity. My father stood silently, hands on the railing, tense. Finally, he spoke. I didn't know, he said, his voice heavy with something like regret. I had no idea you were capable of this. You never tried to find out, I said, calm but firm, arms crossed. You and Julian were too busy dismissing me to see what I was building. You wrote me off without a glance. He sighed, staring at the city. I thought I was shielding you. From what? I asked, frustration seeping through. From proving you wrong? From being better than you thought? He faced me, his expression earnest for the first time in years. From failing. This business is brutal, Eleanor. I didn't think you had the... What? I pressed. The guts? The brains? The drive? What didn't I have? His silence stung, reopening old wounds. But then he shook his head. I was wrong. Tonight made that undeniable. Days later, my father requested a meeting at my office. He arrived punctually, his sharp suit and briefcase exuding authority. Nadia waited. In the conference room, poised as ever. I joined them, curiosity mingling with inevitability. He got to the point, sliding a folder across the table. Eleanor, Nadia, I've consulted the board. We're prepared to acquire Patel and Associates. Your vision would be invaluable to Vance Properties. Nadia glanced at me, her expression neutral. A generous offer, Mr. Vance, but Eleanor should speak first. My father looked at me, hopeful but uncertain. I didn't need to read the folder. No, I said firmly. He blinked, caught off guard. Eleanor, at least... No, I interrupted, my voice steady. I've fought too hard to build something that's mine. I won't trade it to return to a place where I was ignored for years. I'm free now, Dad, and I'm staying that way. The silence was heavy, but I felt no regret. Nadia's faint smile signaled support. My father sat back, at a loss. He couldn't argue, couldn't deny my success, couldn't buy my respect. Finally, he nodded, closed the folder, and stood. I underestimated you, Eleanor, he said quietly. Not again. As he left, a weight lifted from my shoulders. I didn't need his validation anymore. I'd forged my own path, my own triumph, and I was free to walk it unburdened by the past. But the story didn't end there. Over the next few months, I noticed a shift in the industry. Patel and Associates' reputation soared, our projects drawing attention from investors and media alike. Nadia and I expanded our portfolio, taking on bolder ventures, a sustainable housing complex, a revitalized arts district, a tech hub that attracted startups. Each success felt like a brick in the foundation of a legacy I'd built from nothing. Family, meanwhile, struggled. Vance Properties faced mounting challenges, mismanaged projects, legal disputes, and a tarnished reputation. Whispers reached me that Julian's impulsive decisions were sinking the company, and my father's once iron grip was slipping. I didn't gloat. I'd moved beyond needing their failure to validate my success. But when my father reached out, again 6 months after the gala, I was intrigued. He asked to meet, not at my office, but at a quiet cafe downtown. I arrived to find him already seated, looking older, wearier than I'd ever seen him. He stood as I approached, a gesture that felt oddly respectful. "Eleanor," he said, his voice softer than I remembered. "Thank you for coming." I nodded, taking a seat. "What's this about?" He exhaled, his hands clasped on the table. "Vance Properties is in trouble. I won't sugarcoat it. We've lost key investors, and Julian's not ready to lead. I've been thinking about what you've built, what you've accomplished. I was wrong about you, and I'm asking for your help." I leaned back, studying him. "Help how?" "Consult for us," he said. "Your strategies, your insight. We need them. Not a merger, not an acquisition, just your expertise on your terms." The request caught me off guard. Part of me wanted to refuse to walk away from the family that had dismissed me for so long. But another part saw opportunity. Not to save them, but to solidify my place in the industry, to show that my success wasn't a fluke. I took a sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch. "I'll consider it," I said finally. "But it'll be on my terms, and I won't step away from Patel and Associates. My company comes first." He nodded, relief flickering in his eyes. I wouldn't expect anything less. Over the next few weeks, I weighed the decision. Nadia was skeptical but supportive. "You don't owe them anything," she said one evening as we reviewed contracts. "But if you do this, it's because you're choosing to, not because you need their approval." She was right. I didn't need them anymore, but I could use this to expand my influence, to prove that my methods worked even in the most challenging contexts. I agreed to consult, setting strict boundaries, limited hours, clear deliverables, and no interference with Patel and Associates. My father accepted without hesitation. Working with Vance Properties was strange, like stepping into a house I'd once lived in but no longer recognized. Julian was resistant, his ego bruised by my involvement, but my father overruled his objections. I implemented streamlined processes, renegotiated contracts, and introduced compliance measures to stabilize their operations. Slowly, the company began to recover, though I knew it would never regain its former glory without serious changes. Changes Julian wasn't ready to make. Throughout it all, I kept my focus on Patel and Associates. Nadia and I landed a major deal to redevelop a historic district, a project that earned us accolades and cemented our reputation as industry leaders. The contrast between our growth and Vance Properties' struggles was stark, and I took quiet pride in knowing I'd built something stronger, smarter, and more resilient than my family's empire. One evening, as I sat with my husband, David, and our young son, Ethan, I reflected on how far I'd come. David noticed my quiet mood and reached for my hand. "You okay?" he asked. I smiled, watching Ethan play with his toy train. "Better than okay. I was thinking about everything. My family, the business, all of it. I used to think I needed them to see me, to prove I was enough. But I don't anymore. This," I gestured to him and Ethan, "and what I've built, that's what matters." David squeezed my hand. "You've always been enough, Eleanor. They just couldn't see it." A year later, at another industry gala, Patel and Associates won 2 awards, one for innovation, another for community impact. This time, I took the stage alone, Nadia insisting I claim the spotlight. As I accepted the awards, I scanned the crowd, spotting my father and Julian. Their expressions were different now, less shock, more resignation, and perhaps a trace of respect. I didn't linger on them. My focus was on the future, on the empire I was still building, brick by brick, with no one's permission but my own. "Thank you," I said into the microphone, my voice strong and clear. "This is for everyone who dared to believe in the impossible, who saw value where others saw none, and who built something extraordinary from nothing. This is just the beginning." The applause was deafening, but the real victory was mine, earned through years of quiet determination and unshakable resolve. I was Eleanor Vance, and I was free.